Yes.
Rails without Rails, of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So please give him a warm welcome.
Okay, so hi, I'm Piotr Sarnacki, and I'm Drogus on the internet. So if you want to follow me on Twitter or on GitHub or send me an email on Gmail, you can use it. And today I will be talking about using Rails without Rails. And I'm from Poland. Here is a map of Poland. It's nice. Okay, so you can look at me, now at this guy, now back to me. And sadly, this guy is my old me. And you're probably wondering how this handsome young lad changed into this mustached man. So the answer is I will start to work on Travis CI open source parts soon, probably on Monday. And this is sponsored by Engineered. And oh my god, this is my dream job, so thank you, Engineered. Okay, so now getting back to my boring presentation. So, why do I want to tell you about using Rails without Rails? And the answer is I have 3 words for that. And I would say that it's for experimentation. I love experimenting with others people's code, because if you read it, if you use it, you can find some patterns that you may reuse in your applications. Yeah, this is for inspiration. I think I would like to inspire you to play with those parts yourself. And of course, this is for fun, because we need to have fun from programming. So, and if you want some more specific reasons, maybe you would like to do something not standard in Rails, like, I don't know, implement your own renderer or something like that. And then knowing these parts can help you with solving specific problems that you would need to solve with some hacks if you don't know Rails internals. You may also maybe fix bug by yourself, unless it's in Active Record. Like, I know Rails pretty well, but I have no idea what's going on inside Active Record. But yeah, if you know some parts of Rails, you could probably go and fix bug by yourself if you find some. And you can, for example, use code as the documentation, because sometimes the documentation is not very well. Some parts are maybe missing or too old. So if you know some of the parts of the code, you can just go to a method and see what it does without checking the docs. So if you think about Rails, you could say that it's big, that it has many parts, and that it's complicated. But at least from 3.0, it's modular. So if you want to learn, you're probably wondering how to do it to make it easier. And my answer is to get the minimal working version of some component, start small with it, and extend it to know what you can do with this particular piece of Rails. And yeah, and as I said, because Rails 3.0 is modular, you can easily take those parts and play with it outside Rails. So I don't want to be so theoretical, so I will give you codes, and there will be a lot of code. So if you have any questions, or if you think that you don't understand something, please interrupt me, and I would rather explain something in more detail than leave you without understanding all of the details. So yeah, interrupt me if you want to know something. So our first task would be to check how Action Controller works. So if you would look at Action Controller implementation, you would see something like Action Controller base class, which inherits from Metal, and then a bunch of helpers, a bunch of modules included, like helpers, cookies, hide actions, streaming. So you can probably tell by names what those modules do. And there's around 25 more includes like this. So we can check all those modules, but apparently something is going one level up. So let's go to Action Controller Metal. And if you look at Action Controller Metal, it will look something like this, like params, content types, status, dispatch. So you can tell that it probably adds some kind of HTTP support to controllers. These are all methods that are connected with HTTP. So let's go one level up. And the superclass of all controllers is abstract controller base. And I will not show you implementation. It's rather straightforward. And the main thing that abstract controller by itself, that abstract controller does by itself, is ability to handle actions. So if we create such my controller with one method index, and so the only thing that we can actually do with it is create new instance and do process action index, which does not give you much because you could as well call index on this instance, so not gain at this point. So let's do something to change it. So here is the same controller, but I added this one include abstract controller rendering, and I use this method append viewPath, which adds viewPath to the set of paths where views will look for templates. And now when I call render in index, this my controller.new.process will try to render my/index. This my directory is because it's derived from controller name. So by default, it will take controller name and this first part and underscore it and make it lowercase. So this is really powerful pattern. So I would like to give you an example of how it looks in Ruby. I know that probably many of you know this, but I would like to. Maybe someone doesn't know it, or maybe I could remind you how it works. So, for example, we have a base class here with render method that prints base. Then we have a module that also has a render method, and it prints foo and calls super. And then we have my base class, which inherits from base, and it also has a render method, and it prints my base and calls super. So now when you call mybase.new, which creates instance of this class, and call render, it will first go to this render method in the instance, in the first class, like in the class of the instance. Then it will check every module that is included if you call super. So in this case, you call super, it will go to the module, so it will go there. It will print foo. Then if you call super, it will go to superclass and print base. So all the controllers in Rails work like this. So you can extend them just by including modules. And for me, this is really powerful thing because you don't have to you can just create modules that you include in some of the controllers. So you are not bound to, for example, one superclass. And if you want to have some functionality, you don't need to create multiple base classes. You just create modules and include them. So if we go to my controller again, we can add more things here. So for example, here I included abstract controller layouts. And when I say layout application, just like you would say in regular controller, and I again render in index, it will try to render this my index template with application layout. So again, we just add 2 lines, and you have full rendering capabilities with layouts. And we add 2 or 3 more lines, and we get helpers. Like here, I added abstract controller helpers. I can create foo helper, say helper method foo, and now I could do, for example, render inline and use this foo helper. So as you can see, it's really powerful, and if you have something like, if you want to generate something outside of the request phase, so for example, you have some reports that you would like to generate in HTML, or anything else that you need some kind of rendering and some kind of action support, you can just take abstract controller and use it outside of Rails to not have to implement those things yourself. Like before Rails 3, I needed to implement some kind of rendering support of, it was XML, but anyway, I coded myself layouts and block helpers and other things like that, so it took me a day or 2, and it was, yeah, and I had bugs there, so I needed to fix those bugs. And using those things, I would just create this small class with a few lines included, and could use it to render this XML or HTML or something like that. So if you want to look at, I attached, I put all the code on the gist. So if you grab the presentation afterwards, you can go there and play with it yourself. And I would like to stop here for a moment and talk about good design. So in terms of this presentation, good design for me is that components are reusable and decoupled. And a lot of APIs in Rails is just a syntactic extruder over other APIs. So for example, you have this ActionView API now, and controllers just use this API to render views. So Action Controller use some APIs from Abstract Controller. So these are just layers of functionality that you can use in isolated way or use together with Rails, or you can, for example, replace any part or extend it. So this is very nice if you compare it to Rails 2 or even earlier versions. And Rick Heike, who is a creator of Scala, said this nice thing that design is about pulling things apart. And I think that in Rails 3, Yehuda and Carl did exactly the thing. Like they were pulling apart some of the parts that were chaos in Rails 2, and they were extracting it to those nice little components. So our next task will be to check how ActionView works. And where would you go? Like, you could probably check ActionView base because it's the base class. But if you go to this base class, you would see a lot of things and some helpers included and some other things. So it's not easy to check how you actually render a view just by looking at ActionView base. So if you think where to start, you would probably want to find like some real-world use case, some real-world usage of those classes. So you would probably go to abstract controller rendering. So on those previous slides, I was showing you that using abstract controller, you can render views just by including abstract controller rendering to the controller. And inside of this module, in Rails, they use actually those ActionView APIs. So if you go there, you will see how views are actually rendered, how lookup context is created, and so on. And I will show you in a minute how to do it. So we need some ingredients to render views. And first thing that we need is ActionView lookup context. And this is the thing that will look for templates. So if you want to use it, you just need to make a path set, which is just a set of paths. I use just views here. Then you create instance of lookup context, and first argument is those paths instance. And then some options, like normally you don't need to pass those options, but for example, you can set locale or formats. And then if you want to find template, you just call lookup context.find. First argument is template name. Second argument is prefixes array, and this is an array. Like for example, if you use controllers, it will look for views, then slash, for example, my, because I had my controller, and then view. So in controller, it just puts prefix my here. So it will, and you can put more prefixes here, so it will look in various directories. And the third thing is it tells it if this template is a partial or not. So next thing is ActionView renderer, and surprise, it will render your templates, and it's also really easy to use. You just need to create this instance with lookup context as an argument, and then you can render with a context, and you can say that, for example, you are looking for template page. And what is this context thing? Like, so if when you use ERB in Rails, and you call some method, like for example some helper, or some like for example articles path, it needs to go somewhere and find this method. So it tries to find it on context. So in your Rails application, context is usually ActionView base, but every class can be a context if you include this module. So ActionView context is a module, and if you include it to your class, you can make it a context of a view. So, for example, you could make your own context with your own helpers or without all those Rails helpers if you don't like the fact that Rails pollutes the entire namespace with so many helpers. So you could pass your own context and have only methods that you would like there. So to wrap up, template is found by ActionView lookup context. It's rendered by ActionView renderer in context of ActionView context, which typically in a Rails application is ActionView base. And now to show you something more real, I will use webmachine. And how many of you know what webmachine is? Okay, only a few hands. So webmachine is a HTTP framework that is used to, so it's something like an interface between your server and your resources. Like you can create resources with it and then render them to the browser. So for example, you can create a webmachine resource and call it, for example, page resource. And then webmachine, if you go to a certain URL, it will map this URL to this resource. It will check if it exists by calling this method. And if this method returns something truthy, for example, here I check, I get path info from, I get slug from path. I try to find page by the slug, and then I check if this page exists. So webmachine will plug it into server. And if this method returns true, it will render this resource, and if it returns false, it will render 404. So this resource is really simple, and it will just, if it exists, if the page exists, it will just do to HTML and render this HTML, which is a string. So probably if you use webmachine for views, like HTML, you would not like to do it this way because it will quickly become messy. So you would probably want some kind of rendering. So let's use ActionView to help us render views here. So I created abstract resource, and this may look complicated, but I just use all those components that I described before. So here you have lookup context, which is created with paths. Paths is just, again, path set with just views directory. Renderer is just a simple renderer with lookup context as an argument. And here we have this view context, which is, as I said, ActionView base. It will work like in Rails. And interesting part here is that first argument is renderer. Third argument is something that will behave like controller. It's used only in a few helpers, like for example, if form needs to get authenticity token, it will use anything that you pass here to get it from controller. So, and this thing here is assigns. So if you're wondering how those assigns in ActionView in Rails work, you now know. So if controller has some instance variable, it creates a hash that looks like this, for example, and for example, if in controller in Rails, I would have this page instance variable, it would create this hash saying page and page instance variable, and it would pass it to views. So it's not like that views are getting those instance variable from controllers, but actually controllers are passing assigns into view. So yeah, so it works like that in Rails, and I mimic this behavior here. And now this resource looks really similar. Here we have the same resource exists method, but now we can use renderer.render. We're rendering it in context of view context. So we have all the Rails helpers and stuff, and we are looking for template page. And then we can create template like this, so we can use this instance variable because it will use this assigns to set up it. And I will show it that I will show that it works. So this again is on a gist, so you could play with it afterwards. Okay, so now let's go to the browser, and if you for example go to root view, it will render main page. So if I show you this setup, so here we create 2 pages with data mapper. First one, second one is root that has slug _ root. Then in webmachine we plug. I haven't showed it on presentation, but this is the missing part for webmachine. This router. So here we have like _ that root path is routing to anything with slug _ root. So to page resource with _ root slug. So that's why it will find this. It will find this page with this slug. And if you use this is cool. It will render the other page, and probably if we make some mistake, it will render 404. So as you can see, this is some kind of framework that does not have view layer, and we can just use ActionView to add some advanced view support to this framework. Okay, so but now you are wondering probably that if we have so much flexibility with it, why do we use this assigns thing? Like if we have resources, maybe we would like to call those method on resource, not to pass some kind of assigns variable, instance variable. So this is kind of messy in Rails. Not everybody like this. So let's fix it. So again, I will use similar abstract resource, and the only thing that I changed here is that I removed view context, which was ActionView base, and I added ActionView context. I included this module. So now we could pass this resource as a context to the view. So here we have really similar resource, and the only change is that I used attribute reader page. So page will be available as a method on this resource, and I delegated title and content to this page. So now I can have view like this. I can just call title or content, and instead of going to some kind of messy, full of helpers ActionView base, it will go to this nice and simple resource. And one caveat with this, I will show demo. One caveat with this is that it will not allow you to use helpers because you are not using ActionView base. But maybe this is better. Maybe you would like, for example, only a handful of helpers, so you could just add them here, like include only the stuff that you need. Or maybe you could just make some proxy object that you would call helpers on. And again, this works. Actually, this works the same, so the effect will be the same, but anyway, I will show it. So again, we can refresh it, and it still works, and it still works even considering the fact that we don't use any assign here. We just use title and content methods. And if you, for example, would like to extend it in any way, you could just, for example, if you, for example, would like to search for templates in other directory, you could change lookup context into something else, or subclass it and extend it to, for example, to make find method work differently. So as you can see, this is like really nice modular. Could make something that works entirely different from Rails, but it still uses the components that Rails use. So if you would like to do it yourself and check how this code does, you should go to Rails code and read it. This is the best way to know how it works. You can use a debugger, because if you just read the code, you probably would miss some of the parts. It could be probably hard to figure out some of the parts of the code. For example, what is if you have some options and it's coming from somewhere. If you go to with a debugger to this place, you will see what those options variable are. And if you are just reading the code, you can have hard time actually understanding it. And then you should play with this code, because even when I was doing this presentation, I had some pretty good idea on how it works, how ActionView works, But when I tried to actually, for example, make lookup context, find a template, I didn't really know what should the options are, what should the options be, and I needed to really run this code, and when it errored out, I knew that something was wrong and I could fix it. So I was checking my assumptions for this code by running it. And I'm not sure if you read this book. How many people read this book? It's Crafting Rails Applications by Jose Valim. Okay, so if you are interested in this topic, you should definitely buy this book because Jose is explaining those things and many other things in this book. And he shows really nicely how Rails works in other parts also, like, for example, active model, I18N and other parts. So yeah, buy this book. And this presentation will be available at this URL. Now I'm thinking that it's probably the older version, so I will update it soon. So you can grab it and play with the code. And so I don't remember what should I say to summary. Buy Jose Valim's book, play with the code, and read the code of Rails. Thank you. Okay, do you have any questions, maybe?
How much did you get from Jose?
No, I don't get commissions on selling Jose's book, unfortunately. Okay, yeah?
Do you often use parts of Rails outside of Rails?
So, actually, no. I used it once when I needed to render something outside of Rails request phase. But if you so there are many in other words, I don't use ActionView often, but I wanted to show ActionView here because this is the part that is if you write application that uses templates, this is the main part that is that you are using. So I saw many apps that maybe don't need to use it outside of Rails. But sometimes people are doing some weird hacks to, for example, change the way ActionView works or change the way Action Controller works. And they are doing some kind of hacks around Rails. And now with this modular version of ActionView and Action Controller, it's really sad because you have so many ways to extend it with object-oriented programming. That I wanted to show this as an example of how you can use it outside to know how it works, and then you can extend it. But for example, in Jose's book, he shows other parts as well, and he has some kind of real-world use cases. He doesn't have probably anything for abstract controller and ActionView. Yeah, but just like I said, it's more like in my applications, I often extend, for example, Action Controller, which is really nice because I can just include a module and then override render method, put some things there. For example, I don't like callbacks. So callbacks are something that frightens me sometimes because it's some code that you don't really know. Like, for example, if you return false, it will stop callbacks chain, which is weird to me. And sometimes I just want to be sure that it will work like I think it will work, and I don't know callbacks code. So I just include a module, override some methods, and put my code exactly in the place that I would like it to execute. So yeah, so this is more like, this probably is more useful if you like to extend your application. But yeah, I use it for rendering XML for open social application. Any other questions? Okay, so thank you, and you can ping me on Twitter, or we can talk after presentation if you have other questions. So yeah, thanks. Thank you. Oh!
True pirate beer, Belgian as well.
Oh my god, thanks.
Matching glass.
I will drink right away.